One of the interesting things in real estate throughout New Zealand right now, and this is just from the recent stats of the realestate.co report yesterday, was that the asking price for New Zealanders for the average property at the moment is in the mid-800s. Now that probably seems quite scary for most people looking at their first home purchases or anyone just entering into the market. The other thing that's of note at the moment in the current market is that the listings at the moment in New Zealand are up on average about 22%. Now, right now that gives the buyers the opportunity to see the values going sideways, and they have been doing that for about 12 months across New Zealand. We're lucky here in Central Otago Lakes that the property values have held a lot firmer, but all the same, there is a bit of a navigation point for people coming into the market and where to get their do-re-mi or their finances into purchasing a house. To help you along this journey, I've actually dragged the lovely Alison, Mair from Custom Mortgages off the street today in Alexandra, just to explain some of the not so much pitfalls, but some of the roadmaps into getting into your first home, or maybe just purchasing your second home. So I'm going to introduce you now over to Alison. Alison, welcome down to Alexandra here today. The important thing I think for me is, if I go back to my history of buying my first house, there wasn't mortgage brokers, and probably in the last, I don't know how many decades mortgage brokers have been in existence, probably the last 20, 25 years. What a great thing to have for young people or for anybody entering into the market, to get a bit of an insight as to how much deposit we need, can we use our KiwiSaver or whatever, and also to dissect all the LRVs and DTIs and all the little short-term phrases that people use. But hey, before we get into that though, I'd like to just go back into your background, because I have stalked you last night on LinkedIn. And Alison, I noticed that you've had a really comprehensive background in the banking world. Yeah. If you just want to cover off where you come from, obviously, first, because I think that's really neat to know where people have started, and also cover off maybe in a little bit of that banking background, because that's obviously helped you into your current mortgage broking.
Sure thing, yeah. So I was born locally, Pete. I was born in Cromwell. My father was a foreman building the Clyde Dam. So,
oh, wow.
Here we go. And I grew up in Dunedin. And after graduating in Dunedin, moved through to Wellington and worked a little bit for some of the big banks up there. So yes, got about almost 20 years experience in some of the big banks. And I think that's quite common amongst us at Custom Mortgages. We're all coming from a banking background, which is great, and all different flavours. So we understand the jargon and the different products that the banks have, which is cool. You mentioned that there has been some bit of jargon again around DTI, LVR, triple CFA, all of that stuff that we keep hearing about. And I think it can be really hard to overcome some of these terms, and that's a lot of what we do, is we can break it down into language that makes sense. So recently we've seen the government announce that they've made some changes to DTI, so that one's debt to income ratios, that's what they've been talking about, and LVR, so that talks to how much you're borrowing against the purchase price of the property. The good news in those changes that are coming up on July the 1st is that it's opening up capacity in the banks where they can lend more in the space for low deposit customers. So that's really good news for first home buyers. Yeah, for sure, because we all know how hard it is to save towards your deposit when you're looking at a purchase price that is upward of $500,000. So that's not easy. So that's something that we can help clients navigate too.
Cool. So the LVRs, like the loan to value ratios, how's that going to affect the current buyers at the moment? I mean, is those changes, I know, like if you look at incomes, and if you look at what people are earning and combined incomes, is it 6 times, or I know the figures have been bandied around at 6 times their average, the income of the two couples. How is that going to affect people going forward from here in the local market?
At the moment, we're not anticipating it to affect much of our approvals at all. No. And that's because at the moment you'll be aware that interest rates are naturally quite high, and that's limiting what people can borrow at the moment. Where that's going to come into play is in the future, where interest rates reduce, and it's going to cap out for those people at the moment. So that's going to level the playing field and just make sure that when interest rates are low, their home loan's still going to be affordable in that fluctuation where they return to being high again.
Cool. And with obviously the stress of paying a mortgage, we've all, most of us have started with a mortgage or still got a mortgage, and a lot of these young ones coming into the market are going to be borrowing, up to 400,000 or 500,000. How would you suggest for some of these people to help pay the mortgage, or to make it easier for once they've been to you and they've navigated the process, they've got the mortgage locked in? Are we getting a border in? Are we going to make it easier for these guys to pay back the mortgage over time? Or
there's a couple of different tricks that we can do to demonstrate affordability. So yes, at the moment interest rates are a bit high, feels like property prices are high, but there are some things we can do to alleviate the pressure of those home loan repayments. So yes, you can have a border in your house, so that looks like having a flatmate. You might consider having two, depends how many rooms you have in your home, who needs to live there, sort of thing, as to what that might look like. Yeah.
Sure. And I noticed also in part of, I know Custom Mortgages covers, Central and Lakes. I'd noticed a lot of the new builds in Wanaka and Queenstown especially are now catering for that in their actual house and land packages and stuff now. They've actually got not so much a unit next door, but even part of the house where it can be locked off and have a border and and an ensuite, etc., to help get them past this horrendous mortgage repayment.
Yeah, for sure. So depending on what those house plans look like, whether it's a separate unit or whether it's simply bedrooms within the main dwelling, it's a bit of a different dynamic for what income can be considered, but we can move the chess pieces around and try and find a solution that works.
Cool. So when the young ones are coming to you, or I shouldn't say young ones, I've just had an older couple come to me the other day on their first home purchase, which is really exciting, and they're in the process of going through that at the moment to try and become unconditional next week. But what would you advise someone coming into a house purchase? What do they need to know before they hit you, or what are some of the things that you'll prepare them for while they're going through that application process, i.e. KiwiSaver, that type of thing? Is there anything there that you would give there as a bit of advice for someone that knows nothing?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first step would be to reach out. We can walk them through anything from absolute step one to whether you've prepared any of your finance information. We can walk you through it. It's all good to us. So in terms of your KiwiSaver, if you're wondering what might be accessible in there, you can actually contact your KiwiSaver provider and they'll give you a bit of a one-pager certificate that will confirm how much they can access towards their first home.
That would be helpful.
There's also a process along the lines of whether it's not your first home but you're effectively still in the position of a first home buyer, and that's something we can talk to a little bit too. So further down the process of accessing your KiwiSaver, you will need to engage with your solicitor around that. So it's best to start the process early. Make sure you've got all your ducks in a row with that. Yeah. Sure.
And the other thing I think a lot of people don't realise with brokers now is that you've got access to all the banks. So are you finding that I know it's happened to me in the past as well, where maybe your situation suits this bank and someone else, would you want to just touch on that, where you've got that capability of actually dealing with anybody?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we run a lot of programs and systems in our office that demonstrate what's affordable for particular clients at different banks, and that's completely dependent on each individual client's situation. So each bank has their own set of rules, their own rule book, and we have that information and we understand how that impacts your income. So if you've been to your current bank and the answers are no, it's definitely worth touching base with us to see what might be a yes at another bank. There's also great to understand which bank is going to give you a better deal. So that can be in terms of price, but that can also be in terms of structure that's going to suit you. And there's all sorts of reasons why banks might be better for you. So we can explore those options before you're locking anything in.
Cool. One of the bigger picture things that's really interests me was when we go back 2 years when here's another jargon from the industry, was the credit was it the CCFA or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was like, okay, what's this going to do? And I noticed in the following few months, all the banks just zipped up and there was no money going out. We went quiet as well. I think that was early last year, so it must have happened the year before. So we just went, we had no banks lending. The rules had tightened. The whole pretense of that thing was to probably keep the second tier lenders in check. Now with the current government, I know they've actually relaxed some of those rules and that. How do you see that affecting the banks with their loans and stuff, is that going to give them more flexibility and hopefully some more money out? So
Yeah, for sure. So current legislation is more that it's a bit of a common sense approach. So we did see for some time that the banks were looking through your bank statement and they were seeing how much you spent at Kmart,
checking how many coffees you'd had and how many ice creams you'd bought in the weekend.
And there was a bit of panic around things and a bit of uncertainty more than anything.
Yes.
But we have swung back to being a bit more reasonable around this. Like you might have had a few coffees in the last week, that kind of thing. That's absolutely fine. Once you purchase your house, you might bring it down to 3 coffees a week instead of 5. You know, so we can
become a bit of a joke actually for a few months, doesn't it? Yeah, right. Don't go for a loan. No. Cut out all your coffees and ice creams for 6 months, then go and get your loan, so it doesn't show up in your bank statements. It was like a bit of a joke going around the industry for a wee while, but I'm hoping there's a bit more common sense in there. People still got to live, obviously, and some people don't have many vices in life, and one, they, like me, might be a coffee in the morning, and I'm not going without that.
It's no longer discretionary at that point.
Sure.
It was a bit unfair for people in their loan applications immediately after Christmas, for example. For us, that's summer season, and you know we're all celebrating. We've got family over, and there's costs that don't happen in everyday life. So we're back at a point of lending where we can consider those things and be a bit more practical about that.
Yeah. Hey, well, look, I think we'll wrap up there. I mean, thanks, Alison, for dropping in. I know it was pretty short notice. You're probably not used to sitting down and discussing these things instead with another agent, but it's really good. I think in real estate, I mean, one part of our job is to look at what our customers are expecting when they come to see us. And the big thing about real estate agents is, hey, if you're not the expert in your field, pass it over to the mortgage brokers or the banks or the lawyers, because we can't be good at everything. So thanks very much for coming in. And
thank you for having me.
No problem. Cheers.
Cheers.